Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. We're happy to see you for this session for today on the role of the board in fundraising and development. We have Andy Robinson here with us today. He's going to facilitate the conversation. We also have our partners from Cloud Splitter Foundation, United Way of the Adirondack region, of course, Adirondack Foundation, some of our team members here. Feel free to jump in the chat as you have questions as we go along. And we're looking forward to a great conversation today. Andy, over to you.
You got it. Jen, thank you for all your work in holding this up. These programs do not work without logistics and, all the emails and Zoom hosting and the polls and the breakouts. And you are consistently professional and kind, and I appreciate you. Let me also appreciate everybody else who's helping to put this together, which includes John and Brian at the Adirondack Foundation. It includes Cara and colleagues, including Dan at Cloud Splitter. And of course, we have John and we have Brian here from United Way. Thank you all for making this happen. We are halfway through, folks. We have 6 sessions. Today is the beginning of session 4. And I'll preface this by saying the number one request that I get as a consultant, as a trainer, as a leader, this has been true for 30 years. The number one request I get is, how do I get my board to raise money? And so the topic today is an evergreen. It never goes away. And there's really 2 ways to think about this. The most optimistic way to think about it is that we're not doing a good job training, supporting, developing, recruiting, helping people lean into this role. And that is a legitimate analysis for why everybody needs this help. But there's another way to think about it, which is maybe our expectations are inappropriate. And there certainly are some people on this call who have this fantasy of the rich board filled with rich people who are going to ask their rich friends for money. And for 99% of you, that is not a realistic situation. Now, I don't know that you need that to be successful. I don't need that. You don't necessarily need a wealthy board filled with wealthy people. I don't think that's a requirement. But we do have to acknowledge, and we've said this in previous sessions, board members are volunteers. Many of them have jobs. Many of them have families. They have other commitments and other concerns. They have health issues. They go on vacation. A whole lot of them have jobs. And so we have to sort of scale our expectations with what people can bring to the table. And a lot of my work this afternoon is to help you figure out how to do that in a productive and thoughtful and kind way. So let's begin here. What do you want from this? Why is this topic important to you? Why are you here today? How can we serve you? So we're going to do this a couple of ways. Chat is great. And if you want to drop your reasons for being here into chat, that is very helpful. If you feel the need to speak, that's cool too. You can raise your Zoom hand. And we'll call on you and share briefly one thing you hope to get out of this session today. And while people are doing that, I mean, I'll start with you, Jen, since you recruited me and you're holding this. I mean, what's one thing you want to get out of this today? And you'll have to unmute.
I think I'm always from these sessions looking for inspiration and creative ideas. And just learning from others in the room.
Okay, that's a good answer. Thank you.
Andy, I'd like to weigh in if I could.
John, I would love to hear your voice.
Thank you. Just something to think about. Every board has a little bit of a different culture, and every organization has a little bit different culture. Some boards really focus on more of a governance role, while other boards are expected to roll up their sleeves, boots on the ground, give money, raise money. And so it's important to understand what's expected of the board and what the culture of the organization is and what their priorities are.
Cool. Yeah, I think one size fits all does not work in this space, so I think that's real. I would also say, and John will not disagree, that there are best practices. And there are things that, the basics, everybody has to sort of cover the basics. And then we're getting into sort of how do we flex that for different organizations. So we have a poll for you. I am curious as to how long you personally have been raising money for nonprofit organizations. For the organization you are serving now, for other organizations you worked with previously, perhaps your staff in one space and your board in a different space, and you're doing fundraising for both. If you want to harken back to selling Girl Scout cookies back in the day, that is fundraising. You get to claim that in your number of years. So, how long have you been raising money, successfully or otherwise? And we'll see how this goes here.
Got about 70 responses. Keep it open.
Andy, can we go
Yeah,
BC?
I see it on my screen too. What do you mean? Oh, John, you're not that old. Is BC before cash? Is that what we're talking
something
about?
like that.
Yeah, that's good. I don't mind barter. I do a lot of barter in my life, and I think that's real fundraising too. For the record, while you're filling in the poll, I have a next door neighbor who has chickens, and we trade homemade salsa for eggs. And that's, a sweet situation. Everybody's winning. All right. So here's what we've got. Share results, good. 12% of you are brand new to this. Welcome to fundraising. 20% of you have been at it 2 to 5 years. 18% of you have been at it 6 to 10 years. 20% of you have been doing this 11 to 20 years. 20 to 30 years, another 18%. And check it out, we have 11 people, 12% of the group who've been doing this for 30 years or more. I honor you. You are part of my club. Collectively, I'm going to do very quick math here. Dear God. Collectively, I think we're north of 1,000 years of fundraising expertise in this room today. So the point is, I know a lot about this, but so do you. And we're going to do a couple of breakouts, and you'll have the chance to work with peers around some of the questions I'm going to give you. My summary is you probably know more about this than you realize just because you've been doing it and you've been absorbing some of that wisdom through osmosis. So here, let me take care of that. So where I want to start today is this. If you're going to be good at fundraising, oh, Rena, I'm sorry I missed you. So let me call on you before I move on here. Unmute and tell me what your question is.
Okay. If at some point you would address the following item. There are large organizations that have a board and a staff. And the staff of 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 people do all of the everyday things that have to be done. Yep. And I often have seen questions to the staff, train your board to do their job. But also there are very small organizations like ours, for example, where there is no staff practically, right. One person. And the board has this double role of doing the stuff in addition to thinking.
Okay, I appreciate
the fundraising issues may be a little different.
I like the question a lot. Thank you, Rena. I will say this to start. Probably half of what we consider nonprofit organizations in this country are all volunteer organizations. They don't have employees. They're just volunteers. They are the grassroots foundation of the whole nonprofit community. And I love these organizations, so I will just say that. But per your question, Rena, a lot of what we talk about today will be relevant to both all volunteer organizations and organizations that have staff, anywhere from 1 staff to 100 staff. Fundraising is sort of fundraising. I think you're asking an important question, which is who does it? And my spiel, and I'm going to get into this very quickly, is everybody does it. There's a piece of this for everybody. So what you need to be successful. You need to have a case, right? You have to be able to articulate what you do, why you do it, why it's valuable, why donors should care. One, you need potential donors. These could be individuals, these could be businesses, these could be foundations, right? These could be government agencies, whomever. You need someone to ask. You need people to do the asking in person, via email, through the letter, on the phone, however you do that, at an event. And then you need systems. You have to be able to get the money into the bank. You need to send out thank you notes. You need to track relationships with donors. Usually we have a database. Now, I have worked in 47 US states. I have worked in Canada many times. I am coming to you from 30,000 feet in the air, even though I'm sitting in my office in Vermont. Here's what I've observed. Most of you are doing valuable work. I mean, we can always do better at articulating why our work is valuable, but most of you are filling a need in your community. Check. There's a lot more donors than you realize. We will talk about this a little bit. They're out there. The systems are imperfect, right? I mean, nobody loves their database. Most of us could stand to get the thank you notes out more quickly, but we muddle through. Which means for nearly every fundraising situation, the weakest link is the third one. There are not enough askers. There are not enough people engaging with donors. But there's a however here. Most people don't want to ask for money. This is a great challenge in fundraising is most people are uncomfortable or shy or don't feel like they know how to do it. And creating an asker is really a big lift. It's something we all have to do, but it becomes the hardest part of this. So where I have landed is we have to redefine fundraising. It is not about money. It is not about asking for money. It is about how we treat people. It's about how we build relationships. And the way I'd have you think about this is on this slide. It's called the cycle of fundraising. We also sent out a handout to you all with this material. And if you've been in fundraising at all, you have seen some version of this. There are many versions. This one is easy to understand. It's easy to teach, so I like to use it. And generally, we would start on the lower left where it says identify prospects. Once we've identified these prospects, again, they could be individuals, they could be businesses, they could be foundations, they could be government agencies, whomever. We identify them, we educate, and we cultivate. We want them to learn about our work. We want them to get connected to our work. And at some point, we need to ask them, will you give? Once we have asked them, we want to thank them, appreciate them, love them. And our goal with any donor is to involve that person more deeply so they feel a stronger sense of connection to the work we do. If we are really good at this, we take the people we have involved more deeply and we say, hey, do you know other people that might want to support this work? And we use our donors to identify other donors, which is how we complete this circle. What you are looking at is the modern theory of fundraising. Anything you need to know theoretically about how fundraising works, here it is. You learned it in 90 seconds. It is not complicated. If we define fundraising as asking, there are a lot of people who will never get there. And let me acknowledge this makes me sad. I would like everyone to be an asker. I train askers. I'm also realistic about this. And I've come to accept that not everyone is going to be an asker at the end of the day, and I'm okay with that. Now, let's talk about where we spend our time. I am borrowing this graphic from my colleague, Tina Sincotti. She's down in Boston, very good fundraising consultant. And she took the model that I just taught you and she carved it up by time allocation. Like, where do we spend our time? And what I would have you notice is the slice on the bottom where it says the ask, this little slice, it's maybe 10% of the work in fundraising is the solicitation. And the other 90% is the stuff we do before we ask and the things we do after we ask. And a lot of us are all stressed out about the asking. And what I would say is that's not the work. The work is all the other stuff. It's how we bring people into our organization. It's how we connect them to our mission. It's how we thank them when they give. It's how we find ways to engage them more deeply in the work we do. So a very specific example of this is on the screen. Again, we sent this out as a handout. It's pretty small, so it's a little hard to read on the screen, and you don't have to memorize it. But the story here is this is a group in Wisconsin. They're called the North Lakeland Discovery Center. They're a nature center. And years ago, I did a remote training for them via Skype. Wasn't in the room with them, but we had the conversation we're having now. And I said to them, if you were to take this cycle of fundraising model and you were going to turn it into specific tasks at each of these stages, what would those tasks be? And I completed my part of the training. I went away. They sat around the table for another hour together, and they created this document. And I think this is brilliant because this is an entire donor relationship management model that fits on one page. No consultants involved, no expensive heavy lifting. This is just people brainstorming from their own experience. And I won't read the whole thing, but I can click you through it. It says identify prospects at the top. They came up with 5 different ways to find new donors. Educate and cultivate, 7 different ways to do that. The ask, 8 different ways to ask for money. Thank and recognize, 8 different ways to appreciate donors. Inclusive involvement, there are 6 different ways to engage people more deeply after they give. They brought this to a board and staff training, sort of like we're doing today. And they shared it with the group and they said, this is how we propose to strengthen relationships with our donors and raise more money. Does this make sense to people? What are we forgetting? Are there tasks that you would recommend that you don't see on here? So they made a few changes. And then they said to all the people in the room, again, this was all the staff, all the board. I think there were 5 staff and maybe 10 board members. And they said, write your name on the top of the page. And then they said, everyone's going to sit quietly, read this thing again carefully, and circle 3 anywhere on this form that you would be willing to do.
Andy, you're
So
breaking up a
people
little
sat there,
bit.
read it again. They circled 3 items. Excuse me?
You're breaking up a little bit. You might try to just turn your video off for a moment.
I'll do it. See if this helps. Thank you. So what happened was everybody circled 3 items, turned in the form. The staff went back to the office and they built a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet across the top was all the tasks, and down the side was all the people. And they started to have a way to plug everybody into the fundraising model. So for me, this is foundational. I think a really lousy question is, will you help with fundraising? Because I don't know what that means. Like, if you want me to help with fundraising, what specifically are you asking me to do? On the other hand, if you hand me a menu or a list of tasks and you say, here's 25 things that need to be done, pick 3 of them that you are willing to do, now we're starting to get somewhere because that's specific and it's actionable and I don't have to make stuff up. I know what's needed from me. So where we're going to go in a minute here, I'm going to come back to the video. Jen, let me know if it starts breaking up again. What I have in the packet is the template, the exercise. And what we're going to do is we're going to send you off to breakouts. And what I'll ask you to do with your colleagues is to pick one of these 5 buckets. And again, your options are identify prospects, educate, cultivate, involve, the ask, thank and recognize, involve more deeply. So pick one. It doesn't really matter which one you pick because the way I'm thinking about this is your warm-up exercise. You're going to practice with other people. You're going to have about 10 minutes. You're going to fill in one of these 5 boxes. My longer-term intention is to have you take this back to your organization, teach your colleagues what I have been teaching you today, and complete the exercise in real time for your organization. And let me say, we're going to put you in breakouts and it'll be a random collection of people from a random collection of organizations. I've done this exercise many times. 90% of what you all brainstorm will be relevant to all organizations. There are going to be a few things that are specific to you and specific to your mission and your donor base. But most of what we can come up with is relevant to everybody. So don't see that as a barrier, see that as an opportunity. Let's do a little time check here. Oh, we're doing good. So we're going to send you off to breakouts. And again, I'll give you the instructions one more time. Pick one of these 5 categories amongst yourselves, and then just start brainstorming tasks that would fit in there. Now, we are giving you the cheat sheet, right? It was included in the handout. So if you want to look at what the North Lakeland Discovery Center has done and riff off of what they have provided, I think that's great. That's why we have it for you. Jen, let's do a time check here. Cool. Let's go with 8 minutes on this one, if you would.
Great.
And I think we've done enough breakouts now. You know how to do it, but you'll be invited into a room, join your colleagues, say hi, and start brainstorming. Next slide here. Nice.
The breakout rooms just came into the tail end of your conversation you were in the middle of, but I'm interested in hearing, were you just saying that mailings are not efficient ways
Well,
to...
here's I'll make a distinction. Thank you, Aaron. The distinction is this: if you sit down with a list of 200 people and you customize the letters and you write a personal note on it and you hand address the envelope and you make it a personal communication and you could all do that sitting around a table together, that's awesome. That's a pretty good way to raise money. On the other hand, if you are downloading somebody else's list or you're buying the list of all the people who vote in the state of New York or in your county or whatever, and you're sending them a mass mailing that says dear voter or dear friend or dear partner or dear ally, the return on that is very low. And so I make a distinction between like mass impersonal mailing and smaller personalized mailing. And mailing still raise money, but you got to personalize the heck out of it. I think that's the answer to your question. All right, onward we go. I am curious to know if anyone here has ever given money to anybody for any reason ever. And let me say, this is a fundraising workshop, and if you can't raise your hand, I mean, there is karma in this. And, you know, one of the first rules is before you ask anybody else to give, you have to give yourself. And it doesn't mean you have to give massive amounts of money, but you got to put in whatever you can afford to put in. So I want to fill up the chat box. Okay. I am curious as to what motivates you as a donor. And the list will take a minute. The list will come pouring in. You can write as many things as you want. But when you think about why I give, what motivates me to give, answer that question and type the answer in. And we'll see what we get. And this is one of those places where Jen or Cara or CJ, whoever can help with this, as it starts rolling in, I will just pull a few more voices in and I'll ask you to read it and pull out some of the things you're hearing.
I'll go
after, yeah, go for it.
All right. Kate Moore says, got a personalized letter from a friend asking.
Yeah.
Erica says personal connection or a lived experience. Eric shares sense of moral obligation. Karen, affinity to the mission, community benefit, personal satisfaction. The impact of the organization on the Adirondacks. Sally shares an emotional connection to the organization or cause. Amanda says personal connection, perhaps that organization or cause, and wanting to help others, and many more. And 40 new messages below that. You guys are really
seriously, it's crushing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm watching the cascade of answers come in. It's pretty great. So as you're doing that, I will sort of give you a shorthand here. Here are the 3 most important reasons why people give. Number 1, because they were asked, right? We do get unsolicited gifts, but they are rare. The number 1 reason that people give is because somebody asked them in person, over the phone, at an event, through the mail, via email, on social media, whatever. They were asked. Number 2, and several of you hit on this, they were asked by somebody they know and respect. Could be a friend, could be a colleague, could just be an organization they've been connected to, and that organization asked and they know them and respect them. Number three, and we undervalue this, people give because it's a way to participate in the work of the organization. And, for a lot of us, it's like, I can't save the forest, but you can. Here's some money. I can't feed all the hungry people. You can. Here's some money. I can't necessarily go to Albany and advocate for the things that are important to me, but I know you have people who do that. And here's some money and go and do it on my behalf. And so, we can participate with our time when we have time, and volunteering is hugely important. This is a shout out to Rena and the all volunteer organizations that are in the room. We need you. But the other part of it is, for a lot of people, it's easier to write a check or go online and make a donation than it is to show up physically. And we never want to diminish that. I mean, for a lot of people, the giving of the money is their primary way of participating in all of the social change work that you are doing. So I'm underlining that because we have to treat our donors like partners. We have to make them feel like they are part of the team, because in fact, they are part of the team. So you were asked by someone you know. It's an easy way to participate. And then the fourth one here, and some of you touched on this, is giving feels good, right? It's a positive experience. You feel like you're part of something bigger than you. You feel like you're making a difference in the world. And, this is sort of the Uber question here, which is, why are we so uncomfortable asking people to do something that helps them feel good when they do it? And I think the only answer to this question is we focus on how we feel as the asker. So I will be harsh, and I apologize. If you're involved in fundraising, the first thing you have to learn is it's not about you, right? It's not about your feelings as the solicitor. It's not about how you feel making the ask. It's about, how does the donor feel? And most of the time, the donor feels pretty good. I mean, people like to do this. They need to be asked to cross that bridge. But once they're asked and they say yes, it's a positive experience. So I will mess with your brain for a minute. Here's something you have never thought of, but this is my new mantra. Help people feel good, ask them for money. Sit with that for a minute. So we want to build an inclusive, broad-based set of people who support whatever work. We're building a movement here. Perhaps we're building movements, plural. And the way we do that is we invite people in. And one of the ways we invite them in is to say, will you give to support this important work? So, as I just said this, your discomfort, not the point. My job today is to help you feel more comfortable. I mean, that's good. That's my work. I'm up for it. But at the end of the day, how you feel is not the point. The point is, how does the donor feel? Donor feels good. Okay, so I want to get into a very specific tactic here. One way we can approach boards and fundraising is to develop what we call a board fundraising menu. And we sent out a sample, which I'll put on the screen, but it was in the handouts, and we'll link it in chat for you. This comes to us from a group called Garden City Harvest. They're in Missoula, Montana. They're an urban gardening organization. And this is their board fundraising menu. And it literally says this is an all-you-can-eat menu. We ask you to commit to as many items as you'd like, but at least one per category. And you'll notice, again, we're being literal here. There are appetizers, there are entrees, there are desserts. And the idea is that each board member picks one appetizer, one entree, one dessert, and that becomes their personal fundraising commitment for the year. So everyone has a choice. You get to choose the things that you are willing to do, but everyone has to choose something. So not choosing, not an option, but within that space, we're giving you a number of options. And this is obviously adaptable for any organization's fundraising plan and the ways that you want to engage your board members. So, we shared this, and we'll share it again as a Word document. And if you want to start playing with it and take their logo out and put your logo in and swap out some of the items for things that are relevant for you, you can do that. Now, the question is, how do we land this? How do we understand what commitments people are making and hold them accountable for those commitments? Which gets us to the board fundraising agreement. And we also sent this out as a Word document. I've split it over 2 slides, but it's one thing that you will have available. And if you haven't, we'll send them out again afterward. We do that. There are 3 items on this agreement: name, date. Number 1 is my gift. To support the mission of our organization, I'd agree to take on the following: my gift, dollar amount, payment completed by, terms of payment. Now, parentheses. We talked about this in an earlier session. I'll mention it briefly. I absolutely believe that every board member needs to contribute something financially. I do not believe in quotas, right? I don't believe everyone has to give $1,000 to be on a board. I want rich people on your board. I want poor people on your board. I want middle income people. I want all of them. And I absolutely believe everybody can give something. Furthermore, you will sit down with a significant donor, major donor, and they will ask this question. They will say, has everybody on the board committed to this campaign? And you got to say yes. Furthermore, there are some foundations that are now including this in your grant application. They will ask the question as part of the grant application, do you have 100% board giving? Now the note here is people will say, I give my time, isn't that more valuable? And the answer is absolutely, it is more valuable. Sadly, your time does not pay the rent. Sadly, your time does not pay the phone bill. Sadly, that your time does not put gas in the company vehicle. We just need both from you. It's not either or, it's both and. So I want to say that this is in some ways non-negotiable, but if we're saying the amount is up to you as a board member, that makes it accessible for everyone. Second, number 2, prospects. I will provide name and contact information for a certain number of prospects by a certain date. Even if I am unable to follow up with all these people personally, I will still add names to the list for mailings, event invitations, etc. And when you're being recruited to a board, you need to know, in the interest of transparency, that we are not just recruiting you, we are recruiting your network. We are recruiting your web of relationships. That's part of what you're bringing to the board. And then the question is, what is the best way to engage those people so they can be educated and cultivated and eventually asked to support the organization? Then number 3, my fundraising support tasks taken from our menu. 3A, activity dates, projected revenue, if applicable, help and support needed from staff or board. Maybe A is the appetizer, B is the entree, C is the dessert. 2 signatures, signature of board member or volunteer, signature of board chair. Now, I would love to tell you this is a legally binding document. It is not. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to write down what people care about and talk about it with each other and sign it. The counter signing is a ritual. It's this idea like, I see you, I hear you, I'm here to support you in doing this work. We're in this together. We're both going to sign this. And further, this is my fantasy. If you have a document like this and everyone has signed it, what you could do at every board meeting or every other board meeting is you could take 10 minutes and you could go around the table and everybody could say what they have done to participate in fundraising from their commitment form since the previous meeting. And, in one ways, this is a kind of peer pressure, because if people know they're going to have to report, they're more likely to do something. So when it's their turn to speak, they have something to say. But the other thing is it's kind of a celebration, because if you go around the table and somebody says, I helped out with the mailing and I hosted a house party and I went to the library and found a couple of grant opportunities and I went and talked to a local business, right? And like halfway around the table, you're thinking, damn, we're doing pretty good. Like we're actually following through. I want to be a part of this. This feels productive. So it's a way to celebrate the work that people are actually doing. Is it a little bit of peer pressure? Absolutely. But it's also the opposite of that. So my message here is we have to get fundraising down to the task level. We need to find ways to make those tasks fit into people's time availability and their lifestyle and their courage or lack thereof. And then we need ways for people so we can track that and we can get it written down and we can get it into a database and we can self-report and we have a way for accountability.
Andy, can I ask a question?
You may. This is the question moment, Glenn.
Thank you. What's the role for staff and board, or if you have a development committee, the committee
Great.
itself in this celebration and accountability?
Love this. So first of all, let me say development committees are not fundraising committee, development committee, not a required thing. I mean, there's some debate on this because some people say that the fundraising committee should be the entire board as a whole, and there's an argument for that. But if you have a development committee or a fundraising committee, I think they have 3 or 4 jobs. One of their jobs is to help develop the fundraising plan. And that could be led by staff with volunteer support. If you have minimal staff or no staff, then obviously that's happening at a volunteer level. Their second job is to do what we're doing today, which is to train the other board members to be more fluent and more comfortable with fundraising. Their third job is to do the accountability and the cheerleading. And sometimes that's just a check-in. It's like if you have, let's say you have a dozen board members and you have 3 people, 4 people on the development committee, you divide up the board, everyone gets 2 or 3 other board members, and then maybe you do a check-in every other month. And you call them or you email them or you set up a time to have coffee and it's like, how's it going? How can we help you? What fundraising things have you been doing? What's working? Where are you feeling stuck? What help do you need from others? Are there things you would like to learn to do that you don't know how to do yet? And so they are more cheerleader and coach than enforcer, but there's a little bit of the enforcement piece too, not a lot. It's the old line about you get more bears with honey rather than vinegar. And so, I would want to treat this as the cheerleading squad. Good question. We're going to, in a minute, we're going to take a couple more questions. We're going to send you to breakouts, but I'll queue up the breakout now. I want you to be thinking about when we go to breakouts, how you're going to implement the stuff you're learning today. How can you think about trying to integrate fundraising into everybody's work, board staff, volunteers, whomever? And maybe how are you thinking about your own role? Is your own role changing here? And so this is the implementation conversation. And I think what we'll do, I think this works out. We're going to send you off for about 5 minutes to have this conversation and breakouts. And then when we come back, I'll take some questions. And we're supposed to end at the top of the hour, but what we've been doing with these sessions is going over for those who have additional time and want to ask additional questions. And that's fine too. So Jen, I think it's time for the breakouts. Again, the questions are, how are you going to use this stuff? How do you want to implement this with your organization? And are you thinking differently about your own role now? And welcome back, folks. Turn on my camera. Beautiful. So before we take questions, I will just remind you of what's upcoming. We have orientation and training new board members, which actually led by John and Brian. So it's very exciting. And they've got something pretty interesting planned, so I hope you'll be joining us. And then 2 weeks from now, we will wrap up with a conversation about nonprofit life cycles and alternatives to the 501c3, alternative governance models, tweaks and hacks to this system that we have inherited. So that's what's coming. And this is the Q&A part. So I'm going to stop the share so I can see all your lovely faces. And if you have any questions about board fundraising, or I guess board anything, this would be an opportunity. You can put your questions in chat, or you can raise your Zoom hand, or maybe even your physical hand, and we'll try and see it and we can answer questions. And Jen, keep an eye on chat. If any questions show up there, please feed them.
I saw Barb Rotier's hand.
I do see a hand. Barbara, what do you got?
Okay, well, I'm thinking, you talked about help people feel good, ask them for money. That was your statement. And my response to that was, well, really, I mean, a person might not feel good being asked
Yep.
because
Yeah.
they don't have money or they don't want to give to your particular cause. So I just throw that out.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable critique, and I would respond in this way. I think it's in part how you ask, because one of the ways you can ask is to say, you know what, I'm connected to this work. It's really important to me. I thought it might be of interest to you. If it's not a priority for you, if you don't have the funds available, if you're just not interested, that is totally fine. You know, you and I will remain friends regardless. It's okay. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to invite you to be a part of this.
I think that's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how I handle that. John, what do you think?
I agree wholeheartedly, Andy, and I also agree that most people do enjoy being asked and want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. But also we do have to be mindful of donor fatigue. This donor fatigue is very real, and I think you have to be sensitive to it.
Yeah,
And sometimes timing is important, and the approach is important, and various factors. So I agree with Andy that people do want to be part of it, but at the same time, you have to have a certain level of sensitivity around the challenges of donor fatigue.
I could do, and maybe I'll be invited back and do this. I could do a whole webinar on how weird people are about money and all the taboos and challenges and social class issues and secrecy around money. And, you know, one of the interesting things is most of us are shameless about asking people for their time. Volunteer, volunteer, please volunteer. We have no stress around that, right? Not everybody, but a lot of us like, sure, we can ask people to volunteer. If you ask people which, and there's data on this, if you ask them what do they have more of, time or money, most people will say money is more available from them than time because they're overcommitted. And I feel like we have this sort of backwards. Like we should be more shameless about asking for money, and we should be way more careful about asking for time. So, you know, I can't push any harder than I can on that because there are certainly circumstances where I'm wrong, but that's what I have observed. Jen, are you got questions from chat?
Yeah. Related, but a little bit different. Looking about the etiquette on sharing information for potential donors. So considerations before you give their information to the board. Yeah, just how an organization might approach that as you're trying to
Yeah.
engage more people in.
So we have to assume we start the conversation with the idea that donor information is confidential until the donors tell us otherwise. And so if, for example, a board is reviewing a donor list, which boards do from time to time to figure out who's going to approach whom, you have to have the cone of silence and you have to say, we're going to, you know, I'm going to give out some information about some of our donors here. You have to treat this as confidential. As a board member, you know, you are privileged to see this information, but it's for your eyes only. It can't be shared outside of the circle. And I have done a number of fundraising campaigns where we sat around with, you know, refreshments. It's usually pizza and beer, and we gossip about all of our neighbors. And it's like, what about her? How much she can get? How much about him? What about them? How much can they give? You know, and there's flip chart paper and we're writing these names and numbers up on the wall. And I always say to people, this is the cone of silence. What happens in this room must stay in this room. But you can't build a fundraising campaign without having that exercise of who's going to give how much and who's going to ask for how much. So yeah, board members, if you're involved in fundraising, and I hope you are, you have to keep that information confidential. Yeah, excellent question. Thank you. Any other questions you want to ask? By the way, we're at the top of the hour. So anyone who wants to drift off at this point, we love you. We will miss you when you go, but we realize you have other things going on. I'll hang out and answer questions until we don't have any more. Anne, I see your hand.
Yep. I just wanted to state something that kind of caught me off guard when I was on our church board years ago. One of my friends works for a college foundation, and he was like, people with money expect to be asked for their money. They don't want to just part with it. They want to be asked. And that was very counterculture to what I knew, that it's important to ask them because it's expected.
Well, I love this, and I'm going to flip it. I did this workshop years ago, and there was this woman sitting on the front row, and she just looked so uncomfortable and so disturbed. And I called her and I said, like, you have this look on your face. What are you thinking? And she says, our cause is so just. Our work is so righteous. Our need is so obvious. We shouldn't have to ask for money. People should just give it to us. And, my response is, I love that. And it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. You have to go out and ask for it. And so I think the advice that you got was generally good advice. People, even people who have money want to be asked for it, engaged around it, romanced a little bit, whatever it is, depending on the donor. So, yeah. Let us see. Richard, I see your Zoom hand.
Yeah, I have to leave, but I just wanted to express my appreciation. I've learned so much in these sessions. We're just starting up a whole new organization that's basically physicians who are concerned about Medicaid and the defunding. And we're implementing the infrastructure at this point. And boy, am I going to take a lot of these things and stick it in there. Thank you.
Go for it. Well, good luck with that work. We need you. Let's see, Karen, I see you.
I mean, I just have to say, I've been in the nonprofit field for a while. And the number one thing I hear from donors when I ask is, well, no one's ever asked me before.
Yes.
And so I get that. And so it's not that they don't want to give money. It's just that no one's ever asked them. And if they have an affinity to the mission, just say, it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about making sure that the work that we do moves forward, and money moves the mission. I learned that from you, Andy. and so you just got to get over that fear.
Thank you.
Right? I just want to say, because in the breakout sessions and who we've talked to, that I just want to impart that people don't give money because they've never been asked. And that, I think, is the scariest part. It's just they haven't been asked.
Yeah. So this is the fundraising version of FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And there are a lot of people who are on the sidelines who could give if somebody got it together to go and ask them. So it's the end of the workshop, so it's a little late to do this, Karen, but I'm dedicating this workshop to you. So thank you. Anybody else have a question as we are winding down? Let's see. Glenn, you're back in the game.
Yeah, I'm curious, and it was really timely. You sent out the email regarding house parties and trying to leverage your donors to help expand the base of support. And we identified that as being a really valuable tool for us. And you also, we seem to be running into this challenge where the individual, much like when you talked about board members don't want to make an ask, the individuals are very happy to support us and give financially to the organization, but they're less comfortable about reaching out to their network. And so do you have any suggestions for kind of how to get past that, or how to build comfort for them in doing it?
All right, so here's an idea that will only work for some organizations and not all, but I've seen it be successful. What I would have you do is make up business cards for your board members, like literal business cards where it has the name of the organization, the contact info, their name, board member, maybe on the back it has the mission or a list of some of your programs, and you have a competition. And you say every board member is getting, 25 business cards. And the first board member who gives away their 25 business cards, and we're on the honor system here, we will buy you dinner for two at your favorite restaurant. Or we will give you, a gift basket of organizational swag, and you'll get the t-shirt and the hat and the bumper sticker or whatever you have on your market set go. And then board members are like walking around like, who can I give this business card to? And it's simply a way to start the conversation. So if somebody says, Andy, what have you been up to lately? I go, well, I'm on the board of our local food co-op. And let me tell you what's going on there. It's been really exciting. And so it's an icebreaker that they can use to reach out to other people. This is a step before getting them to go and solicit money or to invite people to house party, but it's at least it's a way to turn them into ambassadors. And I will argue one of the key jobs for board members is they have to go out in the community and represent. Period. Right? So any tools that I can give them to be better representative, I want to do that. And that's one tool that I'm fond of. Let's see. I see another hand here. Michael.
Yeah, I would just add in terms of getting over the shyness of asking is that the more you do it, the easier it is.
Amen.
And when you have some success at it,
yes,
it's like a gambling addiction. You want it more and more and more, so it becomes easier over time. So
yeah,
just jump into the deep end of the pool and do it.
Well, what I'm thinking of is fundraising is a dopamine hit, and
exactly.
Maybe we have to advertise that more.
Yeah.
I will tell you, this is a true story, real-time story. I am literally raising money. I am on the board of our local food co-op, and we just did a move, and we're raising money to do all the physical improvements to the building. And we're in the middle of this fundraising campaign, which includes both gifts and loans. And, at 1 minute to noon, I picked up my phone before we started, and we just landed another $6,000 loan from one of our neighbors, which is significant for us. So I got me a little dopamine hit on my way into this meeting today.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, we're a little closer to the goal. I feel good now.
And another tip I learned from someone who is much smarter than I am is that ask for 10 times more than you think the person can afford.
Classic. It's a classic. Yeah. Yeah. When in doubt, ask bigger. You may insult somebody, but you could also end up complimenting them like, wow, he thinks I can give that much, huh? Wow. Well, maybe I can. All right, so we'll take maybe one or two other questions and we'll wrap it. Because I am literally going to give blood this afternoon, giving everything I have. So that's my next task. But before I do that, are there other questions? Cool. Next week it is the Brian and John show. They're going to work on board orientation. They have a special design set up that I'm curious to see, and I'm excited to come and see what they're doing with it. Thank you all for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Jen, what do we maxed out at 120 today? Something like that?
A little north of that, I think. I'll check the Zoom stats, 122 and 25.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah. Thank everyone for showing up, because you all keep showing up, and that's really a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a week.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Everyone.